Welcome back to Let's Run Fit. I'm your host, B Lit. Today, get ready for a truly special episode on goal setting for fitness beginners. We have an expert guest with us, Stephanie, who will be sharing invaluable strategies to staying motivated, overcoming challenges, and achieving your physical and mental health goals. Whether you're struggling with finding time, staying motivated, or understanding your body, Stephanie's got you covered. It's time to set achievable goals and make remarkable progress on your fitness journey. So let's lace up those sneakers and dive right in. Alrighty, Stephanie, I'm so happy that you are here joining us today to talk about goals and all these wonderful things. But before we get too started, could you introduce yourself and kind of let us know about your background and goal setting and fitness and all of those good things?
Absolutely. So I am a Navy wife, a mom of four, and a fitness enthusiast, I guess is the easiest way to say that. I am constantly training or doing something of some sort, riding horses. I'm currently training for a triathlon. I did my first half Ironman a year ago.
That's amazing.
Which was so fun. People think I'm crazy, but I'm only half crazy is how I tell them. And when I'm not doing that, I have my own mentor business where I help moms to become successful in whatever area of their life is, because success is it's a system that we develop internally, but most of the time we're not fully aware of what that system looks like. And so I like to help people become aware of it so they can create success in any area.
That is awesome, because especially just the half Ironman, like I don't think I knew that before. I think that's new information. I'm like, holy crap, because you have to have a very good way of setting goals to be able to accomplish that.
Yes.
Because half crazy or not, any level Ironman is fantastic, like.
Well, thank you.
Like, that is absolutely fantastic. So kind of jumping into goals, because like you obviously know how to set good goals for yourself, because you've not only set them, but you've achieved those goals as well. And I feel like a lot of people, when they're really starting their fitness journey, they really struggle with making something that's achievable and attainable, and not setting something way too big or something way too small where they like accomplish their goal in 3 days and like, okay, like how to make it like that perfect sweet spot. And, what are some like common mistakes, a lot of people make when they're setting a goal, and kind of how can they avoid those things?
Absolutely. So the very first thing that I see more often than not is somebody recreating the wheel. Somebody says, hey, I want to run a 5K, and then they try to make the plan all by themselves. Mm-hmm. And unless you've done multiple 5Ks, you're not going to have a correct plan for that. But guess what? If you Google running plan for a 5K, you're going to find probably a million other plans.
True.
And so what I recommend people do is whatever their fitness plan is, whatever their goal is, right? Go into Google it. What does somebody do if they want to lose 25 pounds in 6 weeks, right? Whatever it is, you're going to see a plan, a bunch of plans. And what I recommend people do is once they have a bunch of these plans, look at them, see which one is like, feels doable, but a little bit uncomfortable, because you don't want that plan to be so uncomfortable that you never get it started.
Or start and quit a week later.
Right, exactly. And so what I recommend is finding something that feels like, okay, I could do this right now. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And then adapt it, right? So for instance, when I started the training for my first triathlon, I had plans to do an Ironman, and that was going to be my first half Ironman. It was going to be my first triathlon right out of the gate. And for some reason, the website wasn't working, and I was unable to actually register for this half Ironman. So I had started the training and then had no race to actually compete in. But when I started the training, I found someone else who had already done a half Ironman. And I said, hey, what did you use for a training plan? And she said, oh, I bought this 12-week triathlete book. It's got all these training plans, all this information in it. I said, okay, perfect. I bought the book. I looked at the plans and I said, oh, that's actually pretty doable, but I need to modify this a little bit because my schedule won't allow me to do this long of a workout on Thursdays, right? So I modified it slightly, still got all the workouts in, still got all the training, but it worked with my schedule. And that's what a lot of people struggle with is they say, I've got this plan, and this is the plan that I have to follow. And if I don't follow it to a T, I'm going to screw it up. It's not going to work that way.
I think lot of people also feel like if they have to modify, they shouldn't do it. And that's so not true.
Yes, absolutely.
You get sick, you have kids, or, it's pouring down rain in a thunderstorm, so you couldn't finish. Like there's so many things that can come. And I know a lot of my athletes will set a goal, and the first workout that they have to change or they have to miss or something came up, they're just done. And I'm like, but you've been training for a month. Like we can keep going. One workout doesn't change it. And they're like, well, we just have to start over now. I'm like, no.
Yes. No, this is not the hard, what was it? The hard 75 hard. Is that what it is?
Oh,
where
yeah.
it's like,
I'm back
you
and
have
forth
to go
on that
75 days in a row without missing anything. I'm sorry. Like I appreciate the valiant effort, but that's not real life.
I know. That's one of those things I hear about. And I'm like, that's great for motivation. But like, that's hard on your body.
Yeah, not only hard on your body, but it's hard on you mentally, because if for some reason, let's say you have a funeral or something, right? And you're out of town and you're distracted by family, well, then you're going to get pissed that there was a funeral and you had to restart your 75 days.
I know. Like it's absolutely crazy, especially because one of the workouts have to be outside for that program.
Yeah.
What if it's lightning? What if it's like a blizzard, depending on where you live, depends on which one you're likely. I'm just like, I don't know. Like I said, I go back and forth. I have a lot of athletes. It's like, we should do something like this. And I'm like, it'll get you started.
Yeah. Yes. No. And it's, and certainly people can accomplish it and they can do it. But to me, it is too extreme.
Extremely extreme. I always say, let's do 15 hard.
Yeah. So I like to live in the area of realism where I will say, okay, it's not realistic to me. I will never, and not only will I never complete that, I will beat myself up along the way because I didn't complete it.
Oh yeah. Mine would be reading the self-help books. It's like a certain number of pages. That would be what would screw me up every time. And I don't know why that would be the hardest part for me, but I know it would, because I listen to audiobooks when I run because it's easier. So I would be sitting there stressing out about, well, how many minutes equals this many pages? And does this count versus this? Like, I can do workouts. I get workouts.
Yeah.
I don't know if I get 2 workouts for 75 days in a row because I'm not a huge fan of doubles anyways, but it's just one of those things. It's like people always try to make these goals ginormous, and they try to make them goals that also take so much time to accomplish. Like people will say, as soon as they start running, I want to run a Boston Marathon qualifier. Cool. Have you run a marathon? No.
Right. Right. Okay. Do you know what courses qualify you for the Boston Marathon?
No. Like, well, what's your half marathon time? Like 3 hours. Is like, okay.
I mean, and that's a great goal to build to,
but it shouldn't be the only one.
Right. Because what we need is some celebrations along the way, some milestones where we can go, yeah, I got that. Right. Like
exactly. Like they go into the overwhelm and they don't break it down into these smaller steps. And on like another side that a lot of people have, I want to lose 50 pounds. Okay. That's going to take you a long time. Let's focus on something small. No, 50 pounds. 50 pounds is what I want. If I make it smaller, I won't do it. And I'm like, but you're probably not going to do it because you pick this ginormous, multi-year goal. Like some people can do 50 pounds in a year, depending on where their starting point was. But like, that's a lot. Like I can't even like bicep curl 50 pounds is what I always kind of like remind people. When someone tells me what amount of weight they want to lose, I find a dumbbell and I like give it to them. I'm like, this is how much you want to lose. Put this in perspective. Kind of thing. So what advice would you have for someone who has one of these ginormous goals in mind, like a huge amount of weight loss or a Boston qualifier time, or for some people, just running their first 5K is a very large goal for some people. How would you kind of suggest to them, like small steps along the way to kind of know how to break down into smaller, more manageable steps?
Yeah. So smaller, more manageable steps is pretty easy once you have the overall vision, but this is something that we overthink. Surprise, surprise. And so if you have that big vision of, let's say you want to lose 50 pounds, right? Then what I recommend doing, because really what keeps us going is our motivation. And what are we motivated by? A lot of the times we're motivated by someone acknowledging the fact that we're putting in the hard work, right? Like somebody seeing, oh my gosh, you're losing this weight. Oh my gosh. Like, and so you have to find out what motivates you, right? Are you motivated by going to buy yourself a new pair of pants or some new shoes? Are you motivated by a dinner out with your significant other, right? Like, so what motivates you along the way so that you can have some milestones and some celebrations, even as you're moving towards the really big thing? And so let's say the 50 pounds, and let's say you're motivated by a new pair of shoes,
Same.
right? Let's go with that, right? So let's say when you hit the 25 mark, you'll buy yourself a new pair of shoes. And then when you hit the 50-pound mark, you buy yourself 2 new pairs of shoes, right? So find out what motivates you and break that down into smaller chunks, right? Or maybe you set aside $100 for that new pair of shoes at the 25, the 25-pound mark, whatever it is, and reward yourself along the way, because realistically, we are all motivated by some kind of reward, some kind of pat on the back. It is ingrained in us from when we are babies, where everybody was so excited when you took your first step. Oh my God, right? Like
we get cheered for instantly.
Yes, right. And somewhere along the way, we had to do bigger and bigger things to get cheered for. And so now we're like, well, unless it's a really big thing, I can't celebrate myself. No, you can celebrate the fact that you ran a full mile, right? Like whatever.
That's a big deal for a lot of people. Like,
yes.
I think people underestimate how far a mile is, because there are people, doing those half Ironmans, like, it makes you feel like, well, it's just a mile, but that's actually a long distance.
Right. Especially if you've never done a mile before. Right. Like prime example, 6 years ago, just about 6 years ago, I shattered my kneecap in an ATV accident.
Oh man.
And it was a horizontal break and the bottom half of it shattered. And the doctors told me that I would never run normal. I would never walk normal again. And I said, well, I'm too young to never run again, so we're going to have to figure this out. And I remember standing on top of an 18-inch wooden block. My physical therapist said to me, you have to jump off of this block before you can run. And I said, what do you mean I have to jump off of the block? I just want to run. Like, just let me run. And he said, there's actually a split second when you're running, when you're entirely off the ground. Mm-hmm. And so you need to learn to jump before I'll actually let you start running again. And I stood on the top of that 18-inch block, and you may as well thought that I was standing on top of the Empire State Building, trying to jump down, trying to get the courage to jump off of this 18-inch block, with him saying, now you're going to need to bend your knees and give, because otherwise it's going to be incredibly painful. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah. I think I stood there. It felt like hours. It was probably just a couple minutes, but it felt like hours trying to talk myself into just jumping. And when I finally got the courage to jump, I stiff-legged it. I hurt the crap out of my knee.
Ooh.
But I knew what not to do. The next time I overgave and almost sat down. But I had to find that happy medium, and I celebrated the fact that I jumped off of that block at the end of that day. I got home from physical therapy and I was like, babe, I jumped. And he was like, what do you?
Cool.
He was like, okay, why is that cool? I was like, because I have to jump in order to run. And he was like, oh, okay. So celebrated the crap out of the fact that I just jumped off of this block.
Yeah, because it was a small step.
And it got you to there. Yep, absolutely. So reward yourself along the way, celebrate along the way. Now, if you're trying to lose weight, don't go binge eat. Like that's counterproductive. But find a way to celebrate yourself, even if you celebrate by going out for coffee with your girlfriend or something, right? Like make it something that's actually going to motivate you along the way.
I like that because I always do it by the week for myself for like my small rewards. It's always like if you get through this week of training that I know you don't want to do, you get this reward. And it's really helped, kind of going on this same thing. There's a lot of talk, like the new buzzwords in goal setting is process versus progress goals of those kind of things. What are some like examples? I feel like a lot of people really struggle to understand the difference because to me, the terms are very, very similar. So I can kind of understand why I would be like, okay, progress, process, but you progress to get here, but your process, that kind of thing. So how could this help someone create those like small building blocks and celebrations along the way as well to help them get to their ginormous goal that they have in mind?
Yeah. So one thing that I love to tell people, and I'll use the marathon example, right? If you decide you're going to run the Boston Marathon, you're not going to go run it tomorrow. You're not. You're not going to put on your shoes and say, I'm going to run the Boston Marathon tomorrow. And maybe if you even are crazy enough to do that, because I had a client one time who was, he was training for a bike race. And he was like, well, I'm feeling really good. I think I'm just going to go out and do like 30 miles tomorrow. And I was like, when was the last time you were on a bike? And he goes, oh, it's been a couple of years. And I said, so no, you're not going to go do 30 miles tomorrow. That's ridiculous because what's going to happen is you're going to feel great in the moment. I said, but then tomorrow and the next day, you're going to wake up so sore that you're going to ruin all progress. You're not going to get back on that bike, maybe ever, right? Especially not in the next week. And so when you're training or you're running for this marathon, it's okay to say, okay, you know what? The training plan says 5 miles. I feel really good. So maybe I want to do 8. No. Stick with the 5 miles because that plan is in place for a reason, because it's going to help you increase your endurance and your speed along the way. You're learning from someone who's already done this event that you're only gaining their wisdom.
And that is such a common mistake.
You don't need to recreate the wheel. Let somebody who's done it before show you what works and what doesn't work. You can modify it a little bit, but you don't need to go out and run the marathon on day 1. That's not good.
A lot of people have the mindset of, if I just do it long enough, it gets easy. And I'm like, no. Because like my husband's one of the worst. I've mentioned that on this podcast before, that he was military. So he has the finish or die trying mentality. And he thinks if he just runs every single day as fast as he can, that eventually it gets easy and he'll be at his pace. And I'm like, no.
No. It's like, it's building on anything else. How do you build a house? 1 brick at a time. You're not going to just snap your fingers and that house is going to be built. You have to build up to each one of those goals brick by brick. And so you can even do something fun, which we used to do this a little bit differently. My husband's military as well. And so for deployments, one of my girlfriends did this actually. She drew a paper tree. She took a big old piece of paper and drew a tree of it for the deployment. And every day they added a leaf to that tree for deployment as kind of a count, when daddy shows up kind of a thing. And you can do that with your goals. Each day that you do it, you get to celebrate the fact that you did it, because guess what? A lot of people aren't doing it.
That's true.
And it's so much easier for us to be consistent with sitting on the couch than it is for us to be consistent with our workout goals.
Because for some reason, we're in a mindset that sitting on the couch every day is normal. But working on yourself, working to run some marathon or trying to lose weight, like those are the weird things in the world now. Choosing to eat a salad out to dinner is the weird thing. I know every time I go out to eat with a lot of family members, I'll get a salad and they're like, all of this food and that's what you picked? And I'm like, well, because it aligns with my goals. They're like, but there's this food you could eat instead. It's like, I get that. So it's like, I'm the weirdo because I wasn't going to eat 2,000 calories worth of something, like I chose to eat something more manageable.
Absolutely.
And we're in that mindset now. Like the athletes that we have, like with my high school kids, the ones that run on Saturdays and make sure that they do their workout and they don't, run out of sight and try to walk. They're the ones that are the fanatics. They're the crazy kids. They're the extra dedicated. I'm like, no, they're just doing what they're supposed to be doing. You're supposed
Right.
to be doing it. So you
Right.
downplay them to make yourself feel better because you're
Yes.
not doing it. And honestly, I feel like that could be the actual basis of what's happening is everyone knows what to do. They just don't want to do
Oh,
it.
a million times. We absolutely, absolutely 1,000 times over know what to do to create the life that we want. The body, the life, the business, we know intuitively a million times over what to do. Our struggle comes with how someone else is going to perceive us doing that thing.
And it's hard. It is. Because when you have people kind of tearing you down, you lose motivation very quickly. Because
Yep.
when people are celebrating you, like your first steps, yay, like you want to keep doing it because you love that feeling. But when they're like, why are you doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you just skip this run? Why don't you just eat the ice cream? Like, whatever it is that you chose not to do, it starts to kind of wear on you and it becomes a very large stumbling block. I feel like, especially for beginners who haven't quite got to the point with their mentality of, well, I don't care what you think, I'm doing it anyways,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. So, what would be a really good motivation advice that you think for someone who's really struggling to maintain motivation towards their goals, whether it is a weight loss or a huge marathon goal or whatever it is? Like, how's the way to kind of like tune the world out, so to speak?
Absolutely. So I got really incredible advice from one of my mentors years ago. And he said to me, there will never be anyone as excited about reaching your goals as you are. And I thought, well, that kind of sucks initially. And then I was like, but it's so true. There will never be anybody who has walked in your shoes. There will never be anybody where this goal means that much to them. They might have a similar goal that means quite a bit to them, but they will never have your exact goal, your exact journey. It will never be exactly identical, but you can find people who are going to support you, who are going to build you up, who are going to encourage you. And those are the people that you share your goals with, and you tune out everybody else. Because I remember, and this was nothing that my mother did intentionally, but I remember when I initially started my business and she said, why on earth would you do that? That's stupid. She said it in some other words. She said it in some other words that weren't so kind. But I could have let that really weigh on me, and I could have let that ruin what it was that I wanted to create. And instead I said, you know what? It's okay that you don't understand. And I chose not to talk to her about my business for a while because every time I brought it up, it was a kind of a teardown fest, right? You may be familiar with the metaphor crabs in a bucket.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you put all the crabs in the bucket and one of them tries to climb out, which it will, the rest of the crabs will pull it back down into the bucket. And that is kind of how we work as humans, unfortunately. I hate to say it, but there are a whole bunch of humans that if you climb out and you start up that ladder, they're going to try to pull you back down because, one, you achieving your goal makes them realize that they have a goal that they haven't achieved. And two, they don't want to lose whatever relationship they have with you. And they think that if you climb out of this bucket, you'll no longer be friends with them.
Yeah, when you're a bad friend.
Right. And sometimes that's not the case, but the reasons that they say the things that they say to you is from their own perspective. It's from their own filter. It's from their own experience. It has nothing to do with you whatsoever. And that's some good advice that I also give to literally everybody I walk into. And I'll say, don't take it personal. Don't take anything that someone says to you personal unless it makes you feel good.
I tell my high schoolers that a lot too, because obviously, high school, there's always someone talking about someone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what they're saying has more to do with them and their insecurities than you. So unless what you're doing makes you feel bad because of you,
Yeah.
keep doing you. Like keep enjoying yourself. And it is very hard to tune things out because I still remember negative things that were said to me by people when I was in high school.
Yes.
Like,
Well,
it's
and
been
not only
15 years and
that,
I remember word for word what was said to
yeah.
me. And, I think a lot of times when you're younger, you don't realize how much words hurt. And then when you're an
Mhm.
adult, you stop caring because you're like, well, I've dealt with it for this many years. And I'm like, no.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the other side of that too is oftentimes the adults in your life think that it's helpful advice.
Oh, that
They
happens a lot too.
they think that they're actually speaking wisdom into you, whereas they're just coming at it from their own fear. And so I take it with a grain of salt, right? Like, okay, that if that's uplifting to me and inspiring, I'll keep it. Otherwise, that's coming out of a filter that I don't want to subscribe to.
100%. Like, it's just, it's hard, but you got to learn to move past the outside noise, focus on your goals. That's why I really like the people who have like mantras wrote on their mirror in the bathroom in the morning to
Mm,
remind them of what their goal is, their why they're doing it, what they're doing it for, all of that, because it helps them tune out the noise.
yeah.
And it's one of those big, big things. Like, it's so incredibly important. And I'm going to switch gears a little bit with my next question that it's kind of been like floating in my head here. It was something you had mentioned a while back, and then we kind of got off on one topic, so it's still on topic but off gear, right? So people set goals and they set ideals of what they think they're going to be, but they're not realistic in terms of where their starting point is and
Mm.
where they are now. So you see how it's like it tied into something we are talking
Hmm.
about earlier. It's you have a limitation from where you are. So either they're trying to start where they used to be or where society tells them they should be by this age. Because I know a lot of people in their 30s are like, well, I'm in my 30s and everyone says I should have this done. Well, you don't. So
Yeah.
you can't just build this gigantic retirement fund starting
Right.
now. You
Right.
still
Right.
have to start at square one kind of thing. So how can someone really like understand their limitations and use that to set a realistic goal where they can build to where they want to go without trying to, like you said, jump to the end of the house?
Yes. Yes. So I love this example and I use it more often than anything else, I think. If you want to drive to California, I have to know where you're starting in order to give you great directions. If you want to drive to California and you're refusing to tell me that you're in Maine, I'm going to give you directions from Florida. And they're going to be very different directions than if you just told me that you're in Maine. Once I know that you're in Maine and that's where you're starting from, I can give you really great directions to get to California. They're probably going to be pretty flawless. But if you're in Maine and I think that you're in Florida, those directions are going to get really wonky and they're not going to make any sense whatsoever. And so what I tell people to do is look at their lives objectively. So from outside of yourself, if your best friend was sitting down next to you, or maybe a total stranger, because sometimes it's easier to tell your whole story to a total stranger and not your best friend, right?
True.
So look at it objectively. Objectively speaking, where are you so that we can get you to that point? This is like directions is a great one. If you decide that you want to pay off debt, you've got to know where your money's going first. So track where your money's going. If you say you want to eat more vegetables, you've got to look and see, am I eating any vegetables to start with? And it can be judgment free. I'm not judging you whether or not you like Brussels sprouts. I don't care. I just need to know whether or not you like Brussels sprouts so that I can make this recipe or give you these directions to California, whatever it is. There's no judgment coming from me, but you're going to get there a lot faster if you know where you're starting from.
I love
It's going
that
to be
example.
less frustrating. It's going to be really beneficial for you to look at yourself and say, okay, this is where I am. Maybe it's not where the world thinks I should be right now, but this is where I'm starting. And knowing this, it will be easier for me to get to there because I know where I'm starting.
I love the California example. Like, because if you think that you should be starting in Kansas, but like you said, you're in Maine,
Yeah.
like that's not going to work. Like, you've got to get yourself there. Like, And like as a coach, I love that, like how it can apply to like yourself, or even as a coach, like if you don't tell me, I could tell you to take 40 all the way, but you could be nowhere near I-40.
Right.
Like everything about that example, I might be stealing that from you a couple of times. like,
Perfect.
like that is just absolutely fantastic. So my kind of next question is going to be for what about when you get to, let's just say you're driving, you've got the directions and your car breaks down and you're hit a plateau in whatever journey you're at. You're trying to pay off debt and suddenly you've had 2 months in a row where you just kept breaking even and you weren't able to get there, or you're trying to lose weight and you've kind of stalled out, or you're trying to get that BQ and you just can't get that next time. What would be some kind of advice to help someone keep motivated and be able to overcome the obstacle that's now hit their journey? Because a plateau feels like a huge stop sign.
Absolutely.
Plateaus are hard. I feel like plateaus are harder to get over than the initial motivation to start.
Absolutely. And so when that plateau hits, I like to remind people to have fun. It seems silly and it seems basic and it seems like it's not actually going to help. But if you relax into it and you remind yourself, okay, why did I start this? Right? Maybe you go back to the initial vision, the initial goal setting, you celebrate how far you've come, make it a game, have fun with it. There are so many times where I watch my kids. I have, as I said earlier, I have 4. My 2 little ones are 8 and 5. And I see them on a regular basis turn something that would annoy us as adults into a game, right? I asked them to pick up their Barbies one day and literally tornado all over my house. I had Barbies in every room of my house. And I said, I'm not cleaning this. I want you girls to help me pick it up. They could have dragged their feet. They could have complained. They could have whined about it. It could have been very different. And instead they have these little horse jumpies that they can jump around the house on. And they got these horses and they made it into a game. They raced each other to see how many Barbies they could hold and how quickly they could get it all cleaned up. And it was over in very little time. And so when you hit that plateau, because this happens to me too when I'm on a run, and I'll get exhausted and I'll be like, oh my God, I still have 3 miles to go. And I remind myself, how can I make it more fun? Maybe I change the music. Maybe I actually put music on at that point because I like to run without music most of the time. And so maybe I put music on and I just make it more enjoyable. How can it be more fun? And that usually helps me get over that plateau very easily.
I love that. Make things fun, because fun is what keeps you going. Because honestly, a little bit of fun is why you started. Like you were excited for something new to do. And once it becomes mundane, you've got to find a way to make it entertaining again. Like I feel like that is so important. So kind of to wrap up today, what would be some final words of encouragement or advice you'd have for someone who's just getting started, trying to set achievable goals and just really needing to know, I can do this?
Absolutely. So the best thing I can say is whatever goal you want cannot be Amazon primed. So you can't order it and it can't be there in 2 days. And so whatever it is that you're going towards, it is a daily effort, but it's something that you get to decide. And if if it's on your vision board or whatever it is, find a way to keep yourself excited about the goal. What are you going to do when you reach that thing? And I remember when I finished my PhD, everybody said to me, well, what's next? And I thought, I don't freaking know. I have no idea, right? And so I focused on that one thing, and then I gave myself space for the next thing. So if you're struggling to figure out what the thing is that you even want to move towards, let it come through. Don't do what somebody else is doing because somebody else is doing it, or maybe use that as your guide too, right? Like, my sister decided recently that she was going to do a 10K. And I said, oh, where'd you come up with that? And she goes, oh, well, one of my friends is doing it. Okay, cool. Right? Find that motivation. But the best thing that you can do for yourself is make the goal personal. Make it about you, why you want to do it. Don't make it about anybody else, because what will happen is you'll lose motivation, or somebody won't celebrate you the way that you wanted them to. And then you're going to be mad at them because they didn't do it that way, and you'll lose motivation that way. So make it all about you. And that's okay. And really just have fun with it. You hit a plateau, turn it into a game. Those are really like the best things that you can do. And, if you fall back, because this is what happens to us oftentimes in life, we start going towards something and then we hit a point where it feels like a failure. It's not. You just learned one way to not do it.
100%.
And
I
that's
think that
okay,
was
right?
Tesla, I believe. Might have been
Or
Tesla
and
or
Thomas
someone.
Edison
Edison, then.
with the light
Oh,
bulb.
look at
Yes.
there, yet again.
Yeah, with the light bulb, he
I knew
found
one of
whatever,
those two said it. I was like,
2,100 ways to not make a light bulb and one way in which making a light bulb worked, right? You're going to find a lot of ways that it's not going to work for you, but there's going to be a way where it does work, and that's what you hold on to.
I love it. That is a perfect ending for today's episode. I absolutely love it. Hopefully, you guys have gotten some great encouragement of realizing you can do, you can get your fitness, you can reach your goals, you can make a goal along the way and have fun doing it. Thank you so much, Dr. Stephanie. I appreciate you being here with us, and I hope you have a fantastic time. How could someone find you if they wanted to get additional help?
Absolutely. So the best way to find me is on Instagram. I am there most often as Stephanie Snyder, PhD. Or you can also find me on Facebook if you search the same name, Stephanie Snyder, PhD. I'm also there. But I like Instagram better, quite frankly.
I do too. There's not as many politics there.
Agreed.
Alrighty. I will make sure that is in the show notes, but we appreciate you being here. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here as well.
Thanks so much, runners, for spending time with me and listening to this episode. If you liked what you heard, please hit that subscribe button and leave me a review. I always love to hear from my listeners. And if you want more Let's Run Fit in your life, find me on Instagram at Let's Run Fit with BLit. Until next time, runners! The information in this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for medical or professional advice. Please always consult a medical professional if you're seeking medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The Let's Run Fit podcast is not liable for risk or issues associated with using or acting upon the information in this podcast.